Whenever you're ready.
All right, good morning, everyone. So first I'd like to start with a question. Does anybody know who this is?
Dave Grohl.
Dave Grohl, yeah. So this is Dave Grohl. He's the former drummer of Nirvana and the current frontman of the band we all know, Foo Fighters. We all love him for his songs like Everlong and Pretender, but there's something else that he usually has that's not in this picture. Does anybody, any idea? What was that? A guitar. Yes. So yeah, so this is Dave Grohl, and one of the most important parts of his act is his guitar, of course. So being a huge fan of Dave Grohl, he influenced me and many other musicians all around the world to play guitar and sing at the same time. His showmanship is just amazing, and it's just inspired me to be the guitarist that I am today. So the electric guitar is a huge piece of history and culture all over the world. Not only is it cultural, but there's a huge science to it that not a lot of people may know about. Today I would like to explain to you the history and overall aspects of the electric guitar. So first I'm going to talk about the history of the guitar, and then the parts of the guitar and how they're used, and then how guitar is used in different music genres. Okay, so the first electric guitar was created in 1931 by Adolf Rickenbacker and George Beecham. This guitar was known as the frying pan guitar because of its peculiar looking shape. It featured a single magnetic pickup which magnetically takes the sound that was produced by the strings from the guitar through a cord into an amplifier to make it louder. So after a few modifications in a few years, in 1950, Leo Fender created a new model called the Fender Broadcaster, or known as the Telecaster. I'll show you a picture in the next slide. This particular guitar also featured one pickup and that brought the sound from the guitar to the amp, but it had a solid body, so it was like, you'll see, it has like the typical guitar shape that you all know. So this was the first mass-produced electric guitar ever made, back in 1950. And so this is the Broadcaster and Telecaster. So a couple years later, in 1952, the Gibson guitar brand worked with a famous jazz guitarist known as Les Paul to work on a new model that we all know and love today called the Gibson Les Paul, and that's this one, my personal favorite, of course. This guitar featured two different pickups instead of one, so as you see here, two different pickups, and which brought a large variety of sounds to the guitar, so you can change from like a jazz kind of tone to a rock kind of tone. This also brought like a warmth to the guitar and had a new shape and style that everybody was like, whoa, like that's new, that's different. So this guitar is also used in modern day music as well. Guitarists like Slash and like the guitarists from My Chemical Romance and all of those kinds of bands, they all either own or use on stage the Gibson Les Paul. A few years later, in 1954, Fender came back with a new model called the Stratocaster, and that's this one right here. And this model was very influential because it featured a new type of neck, a double cutaway neck that helped for better fretting. It's called fretting when you put your fingers on the board. It also featured a tremolo on a floating bridge, which is basically a whammy bar, like that we know today. And it had 3 different pickups instead of the 2 or the 1, which featured actually 5 different sounds that you can put on that guitar, which was huge at that time. This guitar is used by basically every guitarist that has ever picked one up. I know a lot of famous guitarists like Jimi Hendrix and John Mayer. They all use the Stratocaster, which is pretty cool. So other models and guitar companies like Ibanez, Ernie Ball, and Paul Reed Smith have all used the ideas that were brought from these influential guitar models and are used to make different shapes or use different pickups and just make the modern guitar playing. So second, I'd like to talk about the different parts of the guitar and their uses. So looking at this picture, we see this is a typical like Gibson Les Paul model. And this guitar represents most, if not all, of the electric guitars because of its general shape and placement of all of the parts. So looking at this picture, we have three main parts of the guitar. We have the body, the neck, and the headstock. Starting with the headstock, we have, they call them the machine heads, but they're also called tuning pegs. And that's basically, to tune the guitar, you twist them back and forth, and it changes the tone of the note. We have the truss rod cover. This is actually really important because it protects the guitar, and if it's dropped, it doesn't break. So then we have the neck of the guitar, and we have obviously all of the frets and the neck inlays, which just basically shows you like where you are, and I found it like very helpful even after playing guitar for the past like 10 years. So coming down to the body, we have the two pickups, and this one is called the neck pickup because it's close to the neck and it provides like a jazz tone. So like all jazz guitarists use the neck pickup, and then the bridge pickup, which it's called the bridge pickup because it's right next to the bridge, which I'll explain in a sec. But it gives you the rock tone, which all of the famous guitarists use. And so next we have the bridge. The bridge and the tailpiece do the same thing. They keep the guitar strings nice and tight, and so they help them to actually produce sound. Looking up here, we have the strap button. There's two of them right there. And then the pickup selector switch. So you can pick like either the neck pickup, the rhythm pickup, or both at the same time. And then obviously your volume and tone controls and the input where you actually plug it in. Okay, so last I'd like to explain the use of guitars in different genres. So the electric guitar is used in many different types of genres, like from metal to jazz. And so in rock, it's used usually to provide rhythm or leads, like all those sweet guitar solos that we hear. In jazz, it's like usually used as like a nice rhythm or like softer solos with more musicality. And in pop, it's usually just adding like, an extra little thing in the background. So in conclusion, the guitar has a whole world within it that most people don't know about. There are so many varieties of guitars, and no one guitar model is the same as another. These varieties can lead to more and more development in one's guitar playing and can lead to different sounds and styles. The guitar is an instrument that cannot be replaced by any computer that tries to imitate it. It is a way of life and has gone through so much development throughout its history. Plus, makes it look cool too. Thank you.
So Justin, a few words?
At the beginning, his eye contact was kind of like here and there, but once he got like comfortable through like the second half of it, he started to like interact with us more. I think he really knew what he was talking about. He was just a bit nervous, and then I think he took a little long to cover his point, so he kind of cut his conclusion really short to finish the time. But other than that, I think he did really well, like at least like explaining everything, and like he was really knowledgeable about the subject he was talking about.
All right. Well, I like the picture as your attention device, kind of the question about what's missing there. I thought that worked pretty well. The transition to the topic was solid. I know that you kind of changed your topic around a little bit, and I think that the purpose statement needs a little bit of polish. It's got a kind of an awkward structure to it, and it sounds almost like there might be a second part to it, so we need to simplify that a little bit. But we know generally what the subject is. That I thought was pretty good. And there is a preview of what the supporting points are going to be, so that it's laid out pretty clearly for us. Organizationally, it's a combination of chronological in the first section and topical, because the second and the third sections don't have anything to do with the chronology that you got in that first section. I didn't hear a lot of references in the presentation. I think you know the material pretty well. The historical information certainly could use some citations, and then some of the other information that you have probably could use a citation here or there. So that's a little bit of a problem. The explanations, I think, are usually good, although they often are very brief, and I feel a little bit as if you're missing some opportunities to elaborate on some things that might be important. For example, you have the one section where you actually have the guitar and all the parts labeled on it, and you're talking about everything that's on the label there, and you barely have time to tell us what it is, much less explain it and give us some information about it. And I think that that's where you maybe need to make some choices and say, what are the most important things? I'm talking about electric guitar. What are the most important things? And you make references 2 or 3 times to the pickups and the way that that changes the sounds that musicians would be using, whether they were playing jazz or rock music or some other style of music, that there is in fact something that's different about that. So that seemed to me like the thing that you might want to focus on a little bit more. And the one thing that is definitely missing as a consequence would be the sound comparisons. To me, that seems like that's a natural, because you're trying to describe what the sound differences are in a couple of spots. You say you get that kind of background sound, and I'm going, I'm not sure I know exactly what you're talking about. And that's a place where I think that kind of extra supplementary aid would be helpful there to go along with what you're talking about. Maybe cut down on some of the other stuff that you're talking about and plug that in a couple of spots. There's a lot of script on the visuals, the first 2 or 3 visuals that you don't really use or get to. And then there's one visual that's all script, and you don't really go through all of those points, so I'm not exactly sure why it's there. You can probably cut down on those things as well. I like the image of the frying pan guitar and the pictures of the broadcaster, the Telecaster, and the Fender that you were talking about as you went on. I thought all of that made sense, and I could see the differences that you were talking about. That's good. If you could just get the pictures and get rid of the rest of the script, I think that would help a little bit, because you described it reasonably well. I don't think we need the other stuff in the background there. I like the visual, like I said, and the attention device. I also like the kicker at the end. I know Justin thought that you were a little bit rushed, but I thought that you're trying to give us an effect with that visual, and I thought it worked pretty well. Delivery issues, I thought you did a pretty good job. Even when you are trying to interact with the visual and you're pointing at things, you're still trying to stay connected with the audience. You don't turn your back on us all the time. Sometimes you have to turn to see what it is you're looking at, but almost immediately you kind of come back to the audience and focus on us, and that's good. So that's the right way to do those sorts of things. All right, so there's lots of good stuff in the presentation. The things that to improve on definitely would be the visual, not the visual materials, but the citing your supporting materials, and maybe some, narrowing of your focus about what you're talking about. I know you made a last-minute change on what the subject was, but I thought you did a good job considering that it was sort of last minute. All right, thank you.